Rama There was some good energy.
Chapter 3.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Chapter 3, text 11. Devam bhavayatanena ye deva bhavayantuvaha parasparam bhavayanta shriyaparam avapshyatha. Translation: the demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you. Thus, nourishing one another, there will reign general prosperity for all. Translation: the demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you. Thus, nourishing one another, there will reign general prosperity for all. There's a nice photo, picture. Symbolism, high thinking.
My eyes are so clear.
You can find it in the it's in the- Yeah. It's the first picture.
Yeah, I can see.
Oh, nice.
Live happily in family life.
What is the meaning of land?
There will be, it will be ruling, like ruling, like if you all pervasive or like ruling, like king rules.
Yes, okay.
You want to?
Yeah, I can. Herbert, the demigods. The demigods are empowered administrators of material affairs. The supply of air, light, water, and all other benedictions for maintaining the body and soul of a living entity are entrusted to the demigods, who are innumerable assistants in different parts of the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Their pleasures and displeasures are dependent on the performance of yajnas by the human being. Some of the yajnas are worshipped in all yajnas as the chief beneficiary.
You missed a line.
Their pleasures and displeasures are dependent on performance of yajnas by the human being. Some of the yajnas are worshipped.
You need to specify. You jumped a line. Means to satisfy.
Meant to satisfy particular demigods, but even in so doing, Lord Vishnu is Bhagavat.
Again, in this worship.
Is worshipped in all
Yajnas.
yajnas as the chief beneficiary. It is stated also in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna himself is the beneficiary of all kinds of yajnas. Bhaktam, yajna, yapasam. Therefore, ultimate satisfaction of the yajna tati is the chief purpose of all yajnas. When these yajnas are perfectly performed, naturally the demigods in charge of the different departments of supply are pleased, and therefore is no scarcity in the supply of natural products. Performance of yajnas has many side benefits, ultimately leading to liberation from the material bondage. By performance of yajnas, all activities become purified, as it is stated in the Vedas. Maybe you can read this one?
If you want, this has a little bit of your front.
But it's also, maybe you can just read the Sanskrit.
Yeah.
Ahara Shudhao Sattva Shudhi Sattva Shudhao Dhruva Smriti Lambhe Sarva Grandhi Nam Vipramokshaha.
And where was it? Was it here?
Yeah.
As it will be explained in the following verse, by performance of yajna, one's eatables become sanctified, and by eating sanctified foodstuffs, one's very existence becomes purified. By the purification of existence, finer tissues in the memory become sanctified, and when memory is sanctified, one can think of the path of liberation, and all these combined together lead to Krishna consciousness, the great necessity of present-day society.
Just go on.
Yeah.
6:12. Ishtan bhogan ivo deva dashanti yajna bhavita tayadatan apradayyo yo bhunte stena eva saha. Translation. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, supply all necessities to man. But he who enjoys these gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief.
You want to continue?
Purport. The demigods are authorized supplying agents on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. Therefore, they must be satisfied by the performance of prescribed yajnas. in the Vedas, there are different kinds of yajnas prescribed for different kinds of demigods, but all are ultimately offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For one who cannot understand what the Personality of Godhead is, sacrifice to the demigods is recommended. According to the different material qualities of the persons concerned, different types of yajnas are recommended in the Vedas. Worship of different demigods is also on the same basis, namely according to different qualities. For example, the meat-eaters are recommended to worship the goddess Kali, the ghastly form of material nature. And before the goddess, the sacrifice of animals is recommended. But for those who are in the mode of goodness, the transcendental worship of Vishnu is recommended. But ultimately, all yajnas are meant for gradual promotion to the transcendental position. For ordinary men, at least five yajnas, known as Pancha Mahayajna, are necessary. Do you want to switch in between?
One should know, however, that all the necessities of life that the human society requires are supplied by the demigods, agents of the Lord. No one can manufacture anything. Take, for example, all the eatables of human society. These eatables include grains, fruits, vegetables, milk, sugar, etc. For the person in the mode of goodness, and also eatables for the non-vegetarians like meat, etc., none of which can be manufactured by man. Then again, take example of heat, light, water, air, etc., which are also necessities of life. None of them can be manufactured by the human society. Without the Supreme Lord, there can be no purpose, no profuse sunlight, moonlight, rainfall, breeze, etc., without which no one can live. Obviously, our life is dependent on supplies from the Lord. Even for our manufacturing enterprises, we require so many raw materials like metal, sulfur, mercury, manganese, and so many essential, all of which are supplied by the agents of the Lord, which the purpose that we should make proper use of them to keep ourselves fit and healthy for the purpose of self-realization, leading to the ultimate goal of life, namely liberation from the material struggle for existence. This aim of life is attained by performance of yajnas. If we forget the purpose of human life and simply take supplies from the agents of the Lord for sense gratification and become more and more entangled in material existence, which is not the purpose of creation, certainly we become thieves, and therefore we are punished by the law of material nature. A society of thieves can never be happy because they have no aim in life. The gross materialist thieves have no ultimate goal of life. They are simply directed to sense gratification, nor do they have knowledge of how to perform yajnas. Lord Chaitanya, however, integrated the easiest performance of yajna, namely the Sankirtan Yajna, which can be performed by anyone in the world who accept the principles of Krishna consciousness.
Text 13. Yapyashishta shinasanto muchyante sarvakilbishaihi bhunjate te tvagham papa ye pachantyatmakaranat. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment barely eat only sin.
Purpose. The devotees of the Supreme Lord, or the persons who are in Krishna consciousness, are called Santas, and they are always in love with the Lord, as it is described in the Brahma Samhita. Brahmanjana Chuta Bhakti Virachena Santa Sadiva Vidas Yesu Virokanti. The Santas, being always in a compact of love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, the giver of all pleasures, or Mukunda, the giver of liberation, or Krishna, the attractive person, cannot accept anything without first offering it to the Supreme Person. Therefore, such devotees always perform yajnas in different modes of devotional service, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Archanam, etc. And these performances of yajnas keep them always aloof from all kinds of contamination of sinful association in the material world. Others who prepare food for self or sense gratification are not only thieves, but are also the eaters of all kinds of sins. How can a person be happy if he is both a thief and sinful? It is not possible. Therefore, in order for people to become happy in all respects, they must be taught to perform the easy process of Sankirtana Yajna in full Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there can be no peace or happiness in the world.
Text 14. Anad bhavanti bhutani aryanyat anasambhava yajnat bhavati karyam yo yajna karma samudbhava. Translation. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. Purport. Srila Baladeva Vidyabhusha, a great commentator on the Bhagavad Gita, writes as follows: Ye indra yanga tayavashkitam yajnam sarveshwaram vishnam viharchya Tajisham Ashnanti Tena Tadiha Yantram Sambhadayanti Te Santa Sarveshwarasya Bhakta Sarvakilvishay Anadikara Vivriddhai Atman Bhava Pratibandhakai Nikilai Apai Vimuchanti. Tongue twister. The Supreme Lord, who is known as the Yajna Purusha, or the personal beneficiary of all sacrifices, is the master of all demigods who serve him as the different limbs of the body serve the whole. Demigods like Indra, Chandra, Varuna, etc. are appointed officers who manage material affairs, and the Vedas direct sacrifices to satisfy these demigods so that they may be pleased to supply air, light, and water sufficiently to produce food grains. When Lord Krishna is worshipped, the demigods who are different limbs of the Lord are also automatically worshipped. Therefore, there is no separate need to worship the demigods. For this reason, the devotees of the Lord who are in Krishna consciousness offer food to Krishna and then eat, a process which nourishes the body spiritually. By such action, not only are past sinful reactions in the body vanquished, but the body becomes immunized to all contamination of material nature. When there is an epidemic disease, an antiseptic vaccine protects a person from the attack of such an epidemic. Similarly, food offered to Lord Vishnu and then taken by us makes us sufficiently resistant to material affection. And one who is accustomed to this practice is called a devotee of the Lord. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness, who eats only food offered to Krishna, can counteract all reactions of past material infections, which are impediments to the progress of self-realization. On the other hand, one who does not do so continues to increase the volume of sinful action, and this prepares the next body to resemble hogs and dogs, to suffer the resultant reactions of all sins. The material world is full of contaminations, and one who is immunized by accepting prasadam of the Lord, food offered to Vishnu, is saved from the attack, whereas one who does not do so becomes subjected to contamination.
Food grains or vegetables are actually eatables. The human being eats different kind of food grains, vegetables, fruit, etc. And the animals eat the refuse of the food grains and vegetable, grass, plants, etc. Human beings who are accustomed to eating meat and flesh must also depend on the production of vegetation in order to eat the animals. Therefore, ultimately, we have to depend on the production of the field and not on the production of big factories. The field production is due to sufficient rain from the sky, and such rains are controlled by demigods like Indra, sun, moon, etc. And they are all servants of the Lord. The Lord can be satisfied by sacrifices. Therefore, one who cannot perform them will find himself in scarcity. That is the law of nature. Yagnas, specifically the Sankirtan Yagna, prescribed for this age, must therefore be performed to save us at least from scarcity of food supply.
Text 15. Karma Brahma Udbhavam Vidhi Brahmakshara Samudbhavam Tasmat Sarvakatam Brahma Nityam Yagye Pratisthitham. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. You want to read?
This is fine. Pervert. Yainartha karma, or the necessity of work for the satisfaction of Krishna only, is more expressly stated in this verse. If we have to work for the satisfaction of the Yajna Purusha, Vishnu, then we must find out the direction of work in Brahman, or the transcendental Vedas. The Vedas are therefore codes of working directions. Anything performed without the direction of the Vedas is called vikarma, or unauthorized or sinful work. Therefore, one should always take direction from the Vedas to be saved from the reaction of work. As one has to work in ordinary life by the direction of the state, similarly, one has to work under direction of the supreme state of the Lord. Such directions in the Vedas are directly manifested from the breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said, Asya Mahato Bhutasya Nasvasitam etat yad ekvedo yayur veda samovedo tarvan girash. The four Vedas, namely the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda, are all emanations from the breathing of the great personality of Godhead. The Lord, being omnipotent, can speak the breathing air as it is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. For the Lord has the omnipotence to perform through each of his senses the actions of all other senses. In other words, the Lord can speak through his breathing, and he can impregnate by his eyes. In fact, it is said that he glanced over material nature and thus fathered all living entities. After creating or impregnating the conditioned souls into the womb of material nature, he gave his directions in the Vedic wisdom as to how such conditioned souls can return home back to Godhead. We should always remember that the conditioned souls in material nature are all eager for material enjoyment, but the Vedic directions are so made that one can satisfy one's perverted desires and return to Godhead, having finished his so-called enjoyment. It is a chance for the conditioned souls to attain liberation. Therefore, the conditioned souls must try to follow the process of Yajna by becoming Krishna conscious. Even those who cannot follow the Vedic injunctions may adopt the principles of Krishna consciousness, and that will take the place of performance of Vedic Yajnas or karmas. Like how to pronounce this? Yajna?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
like G, but it's not there, right? Yagya?
Yeah.
Yagya. Okay.
We have time for one more.
Yeah.
Text 16. Evam pravatitam chakram nanuvartayati yaha aghayur indriyaramo mogham partha sajivati. My dear Arjuna, a man who does not follow this prescribed Vedic system of sacrifice certainly leads a life of sin, for a person delighting only in the senses lives in vain.
The Maimonist philosophy of work very hard and enjoy sense gratification is condemned herein by the Lord. Therefore, for those who want to enjoy this material world, the above mentioned cycle of performing yajnas is absolutely necessary. One who does not follow such regulation is living a very risky life, being condemned more and more. By nature's law, this human form of life is specifically meant for self-realization in either of these three ways, namely Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. There is no necessity of rigidly following the performance of the prescribed yajnas for the transcendentalists who are above vice and virtue, but those who are engaged in sense gratification require purification by the above mentioned cycle of yajna performances. There are different kind of activities. Those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness. Therefore, they need to execute pious work. The yajna system is planned in such a way that sensory conscious person may satisfy their desire without becoming entangled in the reaction of sense gratificatory work. The prosperity of the world depends not on own efforts but on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord, directly carried out by the demigods. Therefore, the yajnas are directly aimed at the particular demigod mentioned in the Vedas. Indirectly, it is the practice of Krishna consciousness, because when one masters the performance of yajnas, one is sure to become Krishna conscious. But if the performing yajna one does not become Krishna conscious, such principles are counted as only moral codes. One should not, therefore, limit his progress only to the point of moral codes, but should transcend them to attain Krishna consciousness.
Maybe you can take the last one.
Alright. Text 17. Yastvatma ratir eva shat atma tritash jamanavaha atmaniva jasantushtas tasya karyam navidyate. Translation. One who is, however, taking pleasure in the self, who is illumined in the self, who rejoices in and is satisfied with the self alone, with the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. Purport. A person who is fully Krishna conscious and is fully satisfied by his acts in Krishna consciousness no longer has any duty to perform. Due to his being Krishna conscious, all impiety within is instantly cleansed, an effect of many thousands of yajna performances. By such clearing of consciousness, one becomes fully confident of his eternal position in relationship with the Supreme. His duty thus becomes self-illuminated by the grace of the Lord, and therefore he no longer has any obligations to the Vedic injunctions. Such a Krishna-conscious person is no longer interested in material activities and no longer takes pleasure in material arrangements like wine, women, and similar infatuations.
Well, we can have a little
doubts, anybody have some thoughts or whatever, reflections on these verses? One thing I heard from, I think it was Greg, read that Krishna is omnipotent, so he can interchange his senses, so he can, as we know, he can impregnate by his mission, he can eat by his, just by hearing prayers offered, and he can speak the Vedas by his breath. So we're all attracted to very extraordinary persons, but Krishna is just way beyond any other person. If someone just got a little special power or ability in this world, they just become very attractive. We're attracted to that. We're attracted to the six Aucklanders, famous persons. Even though, they may be ugly and they'll be whatever, but if they're famous, people are attracted to them, right? Oh, he's a rock star, he's a film, movie star. Everyone wants to get close and kind of, it's just attractive. And also wealth. And we know all the, especially men, old men, they get all the beautiful young women, just even though they're most fat and ugly and whatever, smelly feet or whatever, but the young women will attract to them, they've got loads of money. And of course, beauty, that's gifts itself. We're attracted to beautiful people and strong, someone's got a lot of whatever, physical strength and can, perform, knock everyone out in the ring, or, we're attracted, and Krishna's got it all and unlimitedly. So, so as we more and more get into Krishna consciousness, we start to meditate more and more on Krishna's qualities also. Everything starts with the holy name, but then comes the qualities and the form of the Lord, and ultimately the lila, or the activities of Krishna. Krishna is very far out. Yakya? Somebody's got some thoughts on Yakya?
So these are like the rituals for worship of the Lord. So that's what basically we do in this tradition, right? With Prashadam and with Kirtan and...
Yeah, often, we see as rituals, but it's kind of more than that.
Yeah.
But yes, in a traditional sense, it's like rituals, but
it's just
like singing and dancing is also yakya, and
yeah,
and offering food, all that.
It's basically worship.
Yeah.
Just like it's kind of like you can get to a state where you are so, if you are like so close to Krishna, the life is so good that the only thing to do is just worship it, like just to praise the Lord.
I love verse 15. It says, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's very beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bhavik, any thoughts, reflections?
If you think about it also, God makes the ultimate sacrifice, right? He gives himself to the all, to everything, so that everything can exist.
Yeah.
Jairam,
It was mentioned several times that for this age the yagya is the Sankirtan yagya, the congregational chanting of the holy names. And it's also, in fact, it's not just for this age, it's the highest yagya. In the 10th canto, the gopis, Krishna didn't come, and only when they came together and chanted in unison, congregationally, then Krishna would appear. So this is the highest yagya for all congregational chanting, and it's also the most easiest for those who are even, have no idea about spiritual life. They can take part in it.
what about the yagyas in let me see now,
Previous ages.
Treta Yoga,
Yeah.
right? that was a recommended process. What are those kind of yagyas?
In Satya Yoga, it was meditation, the Ashtanga yoga system.
Yeah.
Eightfold yoga system. Asta means eight and Anga means limbs. So, yeah. So then in Treta Yoga, there are 4 yugas that go in this cycle. So then it was grand performances of yagyas into the Homa. Maybe
Fire sacrifice.
Fire.
Very, very elaborate rituals,
Yeah.
filled with rituals and filled with chanting, and the chanting had to be perfect pitch and melody, intonation. Nobody can do it in this age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when you offer the ghee into the fire.
Yeah,
Maybe in India there
tons
is
of ghee, and
Yeah.
still not. Nobody can do it in
not,
the age of
not in
Kali.
this age.
It's still performed like in a smaller scale,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
for what we call samskaras, purificatory rites, like when initiation, there's a fire yagya, marriage, vivaha yagya, and different yagyas, samskaras for the children as they grow up, and like installing a new house, Griha Pravesh, and there can be a fire sacrifice and all different kinds of rituals. It's very attractive and very spectacular, but you know, the yagyas with Treta Yoga you cannot do any longer because everything has to be perfect.
Yeah.
If there's just a long vowel and it's short, then the whole thing is, there's 4 priests, and the Advaryu, Huta, and Udgata, whatever they're called, and one of the priests, he's chanting all the mantras, whatever. This is just like I can't do that, but it's like, I always said, Om Purusha Vedam Sarvam. They're going like this, with the pitch and long and stuff. And then the other priest, so one is chanting and the other priest, someone is offering the oblations into the fire, the ghee, and then the third priest is just listening, and if the one chanting makes a little tiny, then he stops him and he has to do it again.
Oh.
So it's
I heard Sadhguru speaking about it, like explaining a little bit about like geometry of sound and how it actually, that there is a science behind this process, and on some invisible level everything is like geometrical and it has to be perfect, just exactly as you said.
Yeah.
Because the sound is the vibration is in certain patterns, geometries.
Yeah.
And everything is basically like this. It's not for our eyes to see, but it is out there, and they knew it.
Physical manifestations come from the subtle plane of sound.
Exactly.
And what they would do to test the efficacy of the yagya, they would offer a horse or a cow into the yagya. An old horse, an old cow, they would offer it into the fire, and then it would come out on the other side in a new body, in a fresh young body. So this is completely,
as powerful as it creates life.
They could do that.
Yeah.
And we also know from the sound vibration from the Vedas that they could make intonation of different mantras and touch water and whatever, and then they could shoot powerful weapons.
Yeah, or explode, do like a nuclear explosion.
Yeah, it's a Brahmastra weapon. And,
yeah,
it's like a nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
And the power water weapons and wind weapons and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they could, do amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
They would also ignite the fire by mantras.
By mantras also. No matches needed.
Magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we know even now, by vibration, you get a certain frequency, like those opera singers who can do the perfect pitch, they can make a glass break, right?
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
There is so much science to it. It's just so funny sometimes to see all those skeptics, after 400 years of research, and disregarding thousands of years of yogic culture, who really has it figured out to such detail that it's beyond our comprehension even.
But there's also, it's not only knowing the mantras, you have to have the purity at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So even if someone would be able to learn it by listening or whatever reading, if he doesn't have the purity, there's not the potency.
But
in
that's,
the
I think,
mantras.
that's even better, because then when you do it, you go into kind of like a trance, like you being taken over. So it's being done, it flows through you. Because if it would have to be you, from your personal you, at least I in the past would be like, oh, I will make a mistake, or I wouldn't want to control it. I would just,
Yeah.
it's easier to operate when you just lock your mind on Krishna, on God, and then observe yourself doing things. Just completely let go and go into that kind of like a trance state. Because that's how I think the greatest work is done, where you don't have to do anything, you just let go, because it becomes meditation.
That is literally the great work, like in alchemy.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's the synthesizing of the microcosm with the macrocosm.
Mm-hmm.
It's becoming one with the universe in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're that pure, then Krishna will act through you. You will act. It's not like you just sit here, okay, Krishna, whatever, lift my hand, or whatever. No, you act. You act, you do whatever you can, but you're completely conscious that it's Krishna acting through you.
Yeah.
Like, we know J. Ram Prabhu is out distributing books, and I did that in the past also for like 7 years or whatever. And we know sometimes you're in the flow, sometimes Krishna acts through you, and you're just like in a bubble.
Yeah.
You're walking in a walking street, and everyone is just completely into material life, but you feel like in a bubble, and you're just so blissful, and people get affected.
Yeah.
They get to you, and then they just take books, like, and then afterwards say, why did I buy that book? They got like influenced,
Yeah.
we tried that. And other times when there's no potency and you think, it's me, oh, just look at how good I am, I just did. Then immediately the Shakti, the power is taken away, and then Krishna says, okay, let's see how much power you have. And then nothing works. And people are just like, be nasty, and sometimes you're just like, one after the other is just kind of not interested, get away and whatever. And it's just like, I hate it like anything. So that's when you think, oh, it's me. Just see my abilities in controlling people's mind. And
I'm so humble.
Yes, I'm so humble. But then when you're in it, when you really, Krishna, just when you really feel compassion upon the souls and whatever, sometimes Krishna just gives it to you. You may have been working like anything, and sometimes Krishna just like, when you got the right attitude. And then you're just, Krishna, don't let me get puffed up.
Yeah.
Just let me, because you're just so happy. You're just, completely in bliss. You can't imagine. Only those who tried can experience it. So much ecstasy, and you just don't want to do anything else. And but it never lasts so long. At one point, you're just kind of starting to think, "Oh, I'm really great, actually," and then it's taken away. Anyway, so
Yeah, but it's beautiful. It's like we are becoming empty vessels, and the more we can empty ourselves, the more Krishna can flow through us.
Yeah.
So the goal is to be like extra thin vessel, just to purify yourself as much as possible, and
Comes by great purity.
yeah,
Takes time.
yeah. But it's the only way.
Yeah.
Nothing else to do.
Any other comments, gents? Think we could have just a little more kirtan, like 15 minutes. We didn't have so much before.
Yes.
And then we'll take prasada.
Great. I'll grab some water because I got
Yeah,
to
I'll
try.
get you a special glass.
Okay.
You want mine bottled water?
How can one be happy if one is both sinful and a thief? Something like that.
Somebody else wants water now, or wait for the shot? Please keep your glasses, gents.
Glasses.
Yeah, two kinds. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,